The human helped the alien queen stand. Now she follows only his orders. Explosions shook the ground and the screams of soldiers echoed in the distance. Queen Lyra stumbled through the hall, her long robes torn and dusty. She had never felt so weak in her life. Her empire, once vast and feared, was falling apart around her. Guards lay dead or fleeing, and she had no one to trust. Caleb Morgan moved quickly behind her. He was a human, not a soldier of the alien empire. His uniform was scorched in places, and his arms were bleeding from a shrapnel wound. Yet he moved with calm determination. He reached out to catch the queen as she faltered. "Queen Lyra," he said quietly, "you cannot stay here. Follow me." The queen stared at him, disbelief in her eyes. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile creatures. They were supposed to run from war, not lead through it. Yet here was one, risking everything just to help her. Lyra's legs shook. She tried to stand tall, but exhaustion weighed her down. The smoke burned her eyes and she coughed violently. Caleb supported her, his hands firm on her arms. He did not speak much. He did not give orders. He simply helped her step over fallen debris, over broken weapons, over the bodies of those who had died defending her. Each step was painful, but Caleb never faltered. His presence alone gave her a strange sense of security she had never felt before. They reached a large doorway that led to a side exit. Outside, the city was chaos. Flying vehicles burned as they crashed to the ground. Alien soldiers, once loyal to the queen, now fought each other for scraps of power. The enemy army moved in waves, swift and unstoppable. The queen froze for a moment, staring at the destruction. "We cannot survive this," she whispered, almost to herself. Caleb's eyes met hers, steady and calm. "We survive," he said simply. "We will move, follow me." Lyra nodded slowly. The words were simple, almost too simple, but they carried a weight she could not ignore. She took a step, and Caleb was there to catch her when she nearly fell. Together they moved through the streets, slipping past enemy patrols and burning wrecks. Caleb seemed to know every route, every hidden path, as if he had trained for this exact moment his entire life. He never hesitated, never panicked. Lyra began to wonder how a single human could be so fearless in the face of total destruction. After what felt like hours, they reached a partially destroyed station. It was small, dusty, and unsafe, but it was a place to rest. Caleb helped Lyra inside and gently guided her to a broken bench. He crouched beside her, inspecting her injuries. Cuts on her arms, bruises on her legs, and a deep gash on her shoulder needed attention. Caleb pulled a small first aid kit from his pack. "This is not much," he said quietly, "but it will keep you alive." He worked quickly, cleaning the wounds and bandaging them. Lyra watched him, amazed at his skill and calmness. She had never known a human to be so capable. "Why are you helping me?" Lyra asked finally, her voice weak but filled with curiosity. Caleb did not look at her as he wrapped her shoulder. "Because you need it," he said simply. He finished and nodded toward the door. "Rest now. We move before the enemy finds us." Lyra felt a strange warmth inside her. No one had ever helped her like this before. Her empire's advisors, her generals, even her closest guards, they would have run or argued, but Caleb had acted without hesitation. He had risked everything for her. Night came and the station offered little comfort. The sounds of distant fighting continued. Lyra sat quietly, watching Caleb check the area for threats. He moved with care, even in the dark, and every action he took seemed purposeful. She began to notice small things. The way he listened to the slightest noise, the way he could move without disturbing anything, the way he never seemed afraid. In the human's presence, the queen felt safer than she had in weeks. Caleb sat beside her, keeping watch through the broken windows. "We will leave at first light," he said. "We have to get to the high tower. It is the only place left with defenses strong enough to hold." Lyra nodded, though she had little hope. The empire was crumbling and her people were scattered. She had no army, no fleet, and very few loyal soldiers remaining. Yet Caleb's confidence was contagious. She found herself believing, at least for a moment, that survival was possible. As the night passed, the queen could not sleep. Her thoughts drifted to the humans she had known from diplomatic missions. They were polite, clever, and curious, but fragile. They were not supposed to survive war. And yet this one human, small and seemingly ordinary, had done what no alien could. He had stood when she could not, and he had refused to abandon her. Lyra realized that her empire had taught her to fear humans, to see them as weak. But Caleb was not weak. He was the opposite. He was strong in ways her empire could never understand. Morning came with a red sky, painting the ruins in blood-like light. Caleb helped Lyra to her feet. "We move," he said, as calm as ever. They left the station, slipping through alleys and ruins. Enemy patrols were closer now. Lyra could hear the shouts and the clatter of weapons. She felt fear, but Caleb's presence steadied her. He pointed to a small, hidden passage between two collapsed buildings. They went through it, careful to avoid debris. Caleb's human instincts were sharp. He noticed dangers she would have ignored, avoided traps she did not see, and led her through the chaos with surprising speed. As they moved, they encountered a small group of surviving soldiers from her empire. They had heard the queen was in the city and had come to join her. But when they saw Caleb, confusion spread across their faces. A human, guarding the queen, leading her. One of the soldiers stepped forward. "Queen Lyra," he said cautiously, "why is he here?" "He cannot command us." Lyra stepped in front of Caleb, her eyes narrowing. She had never done this before, never defied her own soldiers. "He saved me," she said firmly. "I do not need anyone else right now. Follow us or fall behind." The soldiers hesitated but eventually nodded, impressed by her decisiveness. Caleb said nothing, but he did not need to. The queen's words carried authority and the soldiers followed. The small group moved together, guided by Caleb. They traveled through narrow streets, over burned bridges, and past enemy checkpoints. Every moment was tense. One wrong step could mean death. Yet Caleb moved with the calm precision of someone who had faced worse and survived. The queen could not stop watching him. Every decision, every movement was exact. He did not panic, he did not hesitate, and he did not complain. Finally, they reached a small hill on the edge of the city. From there, they could see the remains of the high tower in the distance. Smoke rose from its top, but it still stood. Lyra's heart lifted. It was not much, but it was a chance. Caleb pointed toward the tower. "We reach it by nightfall," he said. "We rest here and then we move. We cannot stop." Lyra nodded. She felt a strange bond with this human. He had saved her life, guided her through death, and given her hope when none remained. As they rested, Caleb prepared rations and checked their limited supplies. Lyra watched silently, realizing that humans could survive with very little, could fight with very little, and could endure far more than any alien soldier she had known. Her empire had taught her to value strength, but she now understood that strength came in many forms. Caleb had it all: courage, patience, skill, and a heart that refused to abandon someone in need. She could not imagine what the rest of the galaxy would think if they knew a human had saved the alien queen. The day passed slowly. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows over the ruins. Caleb remained vigilant, never allowing himself to be distracted. Lyra tried to sleep but could not. She thought of the empire, of the soldiers who had died, of the cities burning. She thought of Caleb and realized that hope was not lost. As long as he was with her, there was a chance. She would follow him, trust him, and survive. She had no choice. The empire could rebuild, but only if she survived, and Caleb had made that possible. As evening fell, the group prepared to move toward the high tower. The sky was dark now, and the city looked more dangerous than ever. Shadows moved between ruins, and the sounds of battle continued in the distance. Yet Caleb led without hesitation, guiding them with the same steady hand and calm voice. Lyra walked beside him, leaning on him when her strength failed. For the first time in weeks, she felt that someone truly had her back. It was not an advisor, not a guard, not a soldier. It was a human. The journey to the tower would not be easy and the enemy would not rest. But Queen Lyra understood one thing clearly. She would follow Caleb. He had saved her life, and now her survival depended on him. The Empire had taught her to trust only those of her own species. But now she saw that true loyalty could come from anywhere, even a human. And she would follow him, no matter what lay ahead. The high tower stood far ahead, tall and battered, but still a symbol of the Empire's power. Smoke curled from its top and the walls were scorched by enemy fire. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the ruined city. Caleb Morgan led Queen Lyra and the small group of surviving soldiers through winding streets and collapsed buildings. Every step was careful, every movement was planned. Caleb paused often, scanning for enemy patrols, and the Queen noticed how alert he always was. He never let his guard down, and neither did she. As they approached a burned-out plaza, a group of enemy scouts appeared. They were fast, well-armed, and clearly looking for survivors. Queen Lyra froze for a moment, fear tightening her chest, but Caleb did not panic. He knelt behind a broken wall and whispered instructions. "Stay low, move with me, do not make noise." He gestured for the soldiers to follow, and they crept through shadows, slipping past the scouts without being seen. The Queen watched in awe. Humans were not supposed to be this precise in danger, she thought. Caleb moved like he had done this 100 times before, each step quiet, each decision smart. Once the scouts were gone, Caleb led them toward an underground tunnel. It was narrow and dark, but it would take them closer to the tower without being spotted. The walls were cracked, and debris fell from the ceiling as they walked. Queen Lyra leaned on Caleb when her legs ached, and he supported her without a word. She realized something new. Humans were strong in ways her empire had never understood. They could endure exhaustion, pain, and fear without faltering. She began to trust Caleb completely, knowing he would never abandon her. As they moved through the tunnel, Lyra spoke softly. "Caleb, why do you care about me? Why risk your life for someone you do not even know?" Caleb did not answer immediately. He kept moving, eyes forward. Finally, he said, "Because you are alive and you deserve a chance. I do not think of it as risk. I think of it as doing what must be done." His voice was calm, steady, and simple, but the Queen felt its weight. These words carried truth. Humans fought not for glory, not for empire, but because they chose to, and Caleb had chosen her. The tunnel ended in a ruined alley behind the tower. Enemy forces were already near the main gates, and the plaza in front of the tower was full of smoke and fire. Caleb turned to Lyra. "We go slow, but we go now. Stay close." He led the group along a narrow path between two collapsed buildings. Soldiers who had followed the Queen's orders moved carefully, but they were tired and scared. Caleb encouraged them quietly. "Watch each other, trust each other. We survive together." His words were simple, but the soldiers followed them without question. The Queen realized that humans inspired loyalty in ways her empire had never taught. They reached the outer walls of the tower. The gate was partially destroyed, leaving a small opening. Caleb inspected it, checking for traps and enemy presence. Then he helped the Queen climb through first. "Slowly," he said, "one step at a time." Lyra did as he instructed, and when she finally stood inside the tower, she felt a small relief. The interior was dark, but it was safe. Caleb followed, pulling the soldiers in behind him. They were battered, bruised, and exhausted, but they were alive. Inside the tower, Caleb began to organize their small group. He assigned positions, told the soldiers to set up basic defenses, and used his knowledge of human tactics to strengthen their position. Lyra watched closely, fascinated. Humans did not rely on complex machines or fancy weapons to survive. They relied on careful planning, teamwork, and discipline. She realized that Caleb's mind was as strong as his courage. He could see patterns in chaos, predict enemy movements, and inspire action with few words. As the day turned to evening, enemy forces appeared in the distance, moving to surround the tower. The queen felt a pang of fear, but Caleb remained calm. He spoke to the soldiers, explaining their plan in simple terms. "We hold them here. We make them fight for every inch. Stay low, stay together, and do not panic." The soldiers listened. The enemy approached, but Caleb had prepared them. They were ready to fight, even against overwhelming odds. The battle began as darkness fell. Explosions shook the tower, and the sounds of combat filled the air. Caleb moved through the ranks, giving clear instructions, helping soldiers when they stumbled, and keeping Queen Lyra close. She noticed that his presence gave them courage. Soldiers who were terrified found strength when he spoke. Humans had a way of making fear manageable, she realized. It was not magic or technology. It was their will to survive and their ability to inspire others. During a break in the fighting, Lyra approached Caleb. "Your tactics, they work," she said quietly. "These soldiers, they listen to you more than me." Caleb glanced at her, expression calm. "I am not taking your place," he said. "I am helping you survive. They follow me because they see a plan, and a plan gives hope." The queen understood then that humans were different. Strength was not just in numbers or weapons. It was in leadership, in clear thinking, and in protecting those who could not protect themselves. She felt a growing admiration for this human who had saved her life. Hours passed. The enemy launched wave after wave of attacks, but Caleb's simple, disciplined tactics kept them alive. Soldiers moved quickly between positions, covering each other, following Caleb's directions. The queen had never seen her empire's soldiers work so efficiently, so bravely. It was not because of fear or orders. It was because they trusted Caleb. She realized that her empire had taught loyalty through fear, but humans could create loyalty through trust, and that trust was stronger than fear. In the middle of the night, a new challenge arose. The enemy brought in a small siege vehicle to break the tower's gate. The soldiers panicked at first, but Caleb remained calm. He directed them to set traps using debris, burned furniture, and whatever supplies they had. They worked quickly, following his instructions step by step. When the siege vehicle reached the gate, it was slowed and damaged. The enemy's plan failed because Caleb had anticipated it. Lyra watched, amazed at how a human mind could turn desperation into victory. After the siege vehicle was stopped, Caleb checked on the queen. She was exhausted, her face pale, but her eyes shone with determination. "We are not finished," he said. "We hold this tower until reinforcements arrive or until we can escape. Stay with me." Lyra nodded. She felt a bond growing between them, stronger than fear, stronger than duty. She realized that this human was not just a protector. He had become her guide, her advisor, and her anchor in a world that had fallen apart. Through the night, they held the tower. Enemy forces tried again and again to break in, but Caleb's clear, simple strategies kept them alive. Lyra began to speak to him more, asking questions, seeking guidance. He answered patiently, always calm, always precise. Slowly she began to see that humans did not just survive, they taught others to survive. The soldiers learned to move like Caleb, think like Caleb, and trust like Caleb. She had never imagined that survival could be so controlled, so disciplined, and yet so effective. By dawn, the battle had slowed. The enemy retreated to regroup, and the tower remained standing. Caleb moved through the ranks, checking on everyone, making sure they were ready for the next attack. Queen Lyra followed him closely. She realized that she had come to rely on his judgment, not just for survival but for leadership. She had always commanded armies before, but now she understood that orders alone were not enough. A leader needed vision, patience, and trust, and Caleb had all three. As the first light of morning touched the tower walls, Queen Lyra stood beside Caleb on the balcony. The city below was in ruins, smoke rising from burned districts, yet she felt hope. She had survived the night, not because of her empire, but because of a human who had stood when others fled. She looked at Caleb, realizing something important. She would follow him, not out of obligation, but because she trusted him completely. He had saved her life, guided her through chaos, and proven that humans were a force no empire could ignore. Caleb looked at her, calm as ever. "We hold this tower," he said simply. "We survive. Then we plan our next move." The queen nodded. She understood now that her empire's old ways were gone. She did not need generals or fleets to survive. She needed clear thinking, courage, and loyalty. And she had all of that in a human who had risked everything for her. She would follow his orders, trust his judgment, and rely on his guidance. Together, they would face whatever came next. And in that moment, standing on the balcony of the high tower, Queen Lyra realized that the course of her empire had changed forever. She was no longer the queen who ruled by fear or tradition. She was the queen who followed a human's guidance, because he had proven that loyalty, courage, and intelligence could conquer even the greatest enemy. Caleb had saved her life, and now he had saved her empire, not with weapons but with simple, brilliant leadership. She would never forget it, and she would never doubt him again. Queen Lyra stood at the top of the high tower, looking down at the city below. Smoke rose from broken buildings, and the distant sounds of battle had slowed, but they had not stopped. Caleb Morgan moved beside her, calm and observant as always. The small group of soldiers and survivors were reorganizing under his guidance, preparing for whatever came next. The queen had learned to trust him completely. Without thinking, she had begun to follow his instructions even before he spoke. His presence had changed her, and through him, she was beginning to see her empire in a new way. A loud commotion broke the quiet. Scouts brought urgent news. The alien High Council had sent a delegation to confront the queen. They accused her of betrayal and demanded that Caleb be removed immediately. Their ships hovered near the tower, symbols of authority and power flashing in the morning light. The queen felt a wave of fear. Her council was her empire, and they had always been loyal to tradition. Now they questioned her, and worse, they questioned a human. Caleb studied the approaching ships. He did not panic. "They want to intimidate," he said quietly. "We are ready. Follow my instructions and we hold." The queen nodded. She trusted him. She called her remaining soldiers together. "Do not fear them," she said. "We stand together. We fight for our survival, not for their rules." Some soldiers looked at her in surprise. The queen had never spoken like this before. She had always obeyed tradition, always feared her council more than the enemy. Now she spoke with conviction, and her soldiers felt it. The council's delegation arrived, landing near the base of the tower. They shouted orders, demanding Caleb step aside. Lyra stepped forward, her robes torn and dusty, her hair messy from battle, but her voice was strong. "He saved my life," she said. "He guided me when everyone else failed. He stays with me and we follow his plan." Murmurs ran through the soldiers. Some council members were angry, their faces twisted in disbelief. They had never been defied like this. Lyra's voice carried authority, and it was clear she would not back down. Caleb watched quietly, studying the council's actions. He gave no speeches. He simply prepared the soldiers, showing them how to take positions and move efficiently. His instructions were simple, easy to follow, and effective. The queen noticed how quickly her soldiers adapted, how they listened to him without hesitation. He had proven himself in battle, and now even those who doubted humans began to see his skill. The council sent a small strike team to remove Caleb by force. Their ships fired warning shots, and a group of elite soldiers moved toward the tower. Caleb acted immediately. He directed the queen's soldiers to defend the entrance using traps, debris, and anything they could find. They worked quickly, following his instructions step by step. The elite soldiers advanced, but they were slowed by the careful defenses and the disciplined human-led force. Queen Lyra moved beside Caleb, guiding soldiers who were unsure, reinforcing his orders and inspiring them with courage. As the battle continued, Lyra realized how much she had changed. She had always led by fear, by title, and by power. Now she led through trust, through action, and through the example Caleb set. The soldiers fought harder, moved faster, and made decisions with confidence because he had taught them to think clearly, not just obey blindly. The council's forces were strong, but they were unprepared for this type of human-led defense. Caleb noticed an opportunity. A small group of enemy soldiers had moved to flank the tower. He signaled quietly to Lyra. "We divide them," he said. "Draw their attention here, trap them there. It is simple, but it works." Lyra followed his instructions, positioning soldiers where he indicated. They executed the plan with precision. The enemy soldiers, confident at first, found themselves caught in traps and ambushes. One by one, they fell or surrendered. The queen felt pride not in herself, but in the humans and soldiers who followed Caleb. The council watched in disbelief. Their authority, built over centuries, was crumbling before their eyes. They had sent elite troops, confident in their power, and yet they were defeated by a small group using simple tactics. The queen stepped forward and addressed the council. "This is your empire's choice," she said. "You can follow tradition and lose, or you can adapt and survive. Caleb saved my life. He guides us. We follow him." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of truth. Some council members hesitated, unsure of how to respond. The queen's courage was infectious. As the hours passed, more of the council's soldiers attempted attacks, but Caleb anticipated each move. He positioned the defenders strategically, reinforced weak points, and used the environment to their advantage. The queen moved with him, her trust complete. Every time she saw a soldier falter, Caleb was there to guide them, to instruct them, to inspire them. Slowly, the tide turned. The enemy forces began to retreat, realizing they could not break the tower while facing a human-led defense. During a lull in the fighting, the queen spoke to Caleb quietly. "I never thought humans could do this," she said. "They are not supposed to survive like this, let alone command." Caleb glanced at her, calm as ever. "We survive because we have to, not because we should," he said. "We fight because we care, and we lead by example, not by fear." Lyra thought about his words. Her empire had ruled through fear for generations, and yet this human had shown her a better way. She began to understand that true leadership was not about power. It was about trust, courage, and clear thinking. As evening fell, the council finally withdrew. Their ships left the skies and the remaining soldiers retreated. The tower was safe for now. Lyra walked among the survivors, her eyes bright. She spoke to each soldier, thanking them for their bravery, but also pointing to Caleb. "We survived because of him," she said. "He showed us the way. We follow him." The soldiers nodded, some still in disbelief that a human had led them to victory. The queen smiled quietly. She had seen the power of humanity firsthand, and it had changed her. After the battle, Caleb helped the queen sit and rest. She was exhausted, her body sore, but her mind was sharp. She looked at him with admiration and respect. "I will follow you," she said simply. "You saved my life, and now you guide my empire. I trust your judgment completely." Caleb nodded, his expression calm. "We survive together," he said. "Your empire survives if we work together. That is all that matters." The queen began to make plans under Caleb's guidance. They reorganized the remaining soldiers, set up defenses, and prepared for the next attack. She learned to rely on his decisions, to trust his instincts, and to follow his strategies. She saw that humans had a way of simplifying chaos, turning fear into action, and inspiring loyalty. Her empire had taught her fear, but Caleb taught her hope. In the days that followed, the queen and Caleb strengthened their position in the tower. Enemy scouts were repelled, supply lines were repaired, and the remaining loyal soldiers learned to move with precision. Lyra continued to speak with Caleb, asking questions and learning from him. She realized that survival was not just about strength or numbers. It was about clear thinking, courage, and trust. She had found all of that in a human who had risked everything to save her. The alien High Council, once confident in their power, was forced to accept a new reality. The Queen had defied tradition, chosen a human as her advisor, and successfully defended her position. Whispers spread throughout the Empire about the strange alliance, but Lyra did not care. She had learned something far more important. Humans could lead, protect, and inspire in ways her empire had never imagined. She had chosen loyalty and courage over fear and tradition, and it had saved them all. At night, as the city slept under the shadow of the high tower, Queen Lyra stood beside Caleb on the balcony. The city below was quiet, but she knew danger would return. She looked at Caleb and realized that she no longer feared what was coming. With him, she had a chance, not just to survive but to rebuild, to lead differently, and to prove that humanity's way could change an empire. Caleb did not speak, but his presence alone gave her strength. She felt hope for the first time in weeks. As the first light of dawn touched the tower, the Queen and her human advisor prepared for the next challenge. The council may have returned, enemies may have attacked again, but Lyra knew one thing clearly: she would follow Caleb. He had saved her life, guided her army, and proven that humans were a force that could not be ignored. The Empire's future was uncertain, but she was ready. She had a human by her side, and that was more powerful than any fleet, any weapon, or any law. Together, they would face whatever came next, and they would survive. In that quiet moment, Queen Lyra understood something important. Power without trust was empty. Strength without courage was meaningless. Leadership without loyalty was fragile. Caleb had shown her all three, not with words alone, but with action. He had saved her life, guided her army, and inspired those who had doubted him. And she would follow him, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And so, as the sun rose over the ruined city, Queen Lyra stood tall beside the human who had changed her empire. The High Council had been defied, the enemy repelled, and the empire's hope reborn. All because a human had risked everything, acted with courage, and taught her the true meaning of leadership. She would never forget it, and she would never doubt him again. She would follow Caleb Morgan, and together they would shape the future of the empire. The city below the high tower was quiet, but Queen Lyra knew it would not stay that way. Enemy forces were regrouping, and rumors spread that the alien High Council would attempt one last strike. She stood beside Caleb Morgan, who scanned the horizon with calm eyes. The soldiers moved quietly around them, repairing defenses, setting traps, and preparing for whatever would come. The Queen felt a strange sense of peace, even with danger close. She had learned to trust Caleb completely, and that trust gave her strength no weapon could provide. "We move soon," Caleb said softly. "The enemy will attack at first light. We have to be ready." Lyra nodded. She had come to understand the human's instincts. He did not speak unnecessarily, but when he did, every word carried truth. She walked among the soldiers, speaking with them, encouraging them, and helping to organize their positions. Under Caleb's guidance, they had become disciplined, confident, and coordinated. She realized that human leadership was different from anything her empire had ever known. It relied on trust and clarity, not fear or authority. As night fell, the Queen and Caleb walked along the balcony, looking at the city lights flickering in the ruins. Lyra spoke quietly. "I never thought a human could change an empire," she said. "But you have." Caleb looked at her, expression calm. "I do not change empires," he said. "I help people survive. You lead this empire, I guide it. Together we are stronger." Lyra nodded. She had learned to rely on him, not just for strategy, but for judgment, for vision, and for hope. The first light of dawn brought the enemy attack. Ships filled the sky, and soldiers advanced toward the tower. Caleb moved quickly, directing positions, reinforcing defenses, and giving clear, simple orders. "Hold the line," he said. "Watch each other, trust each other." The soldiers obeyed, moving efficiently, covering each other and following every instruction. Queen Lyra moved with them, guiding where needed but always following Caleb's lead. She felt pride in the soldiers and in the human who had taught them to fight like one. The enemy advanced in waves. Their weapons were powerful, their numbers large, but Caleb had prepared the defenders well. Traps slowed their progress, barricades channeled their movements, and coordinated attacks from the tower cut them down. The soldiers, inspired by Caleb, fought with courage they did not know they had. Queen Lyra watched in awe. Humans could endure, adapt, and inspire. Caleb's leadership had turned a small group of survivors into a force capable of facing an empire. In the middle of the battle, the enemy attempted a bold move. A group of elite soldiers tried to break through the rear defenses. Caleb noticed immediately. He whispered instructions to a small squad of loyal soldiers, including Queen Lyra. "Draw them in, then trap them," he said. The soldiers moved carefully, luring the enemy into a narrow corridor. When the attackers entered, hidden barriers and traps slowed them down. The defenders attacked from above and behind, and the elite force was neutralized. The queen was amazed at how calm Caleb remained, even when danger was so close. Hours passed. The battle raged, but Caleb's strategy held. Soldiers moved efficiently, following simple commands, coordinating attacks, and reinforcing weak points. Queen Lyra moved among them, helping where needed, but always trusting Caleb's judgment. She saw soldiers who had been terrified now fighting with confidence, even courage. They had learned from the human that fear could be managed, that careful planning could overcome strength, and that loyalty to a trusted leader could inspire victory. At midday, the enemy launched one last massive strike. Ships bombarded the tower and thousands of soldiers advanced. The queen felt fear, but Caleb's presence steadied her. "We survived this," he said. "Stay close, follow my instructions." She did. They moved quickly through the tower, reinforcing defenses, repositioning soldiers, and preparing for the final wave. Caleb's mind worked like a machine, analyzing every angle, every threat, every weakness. Queen Lyra realized that humans had a gift, the ability to see order in chaos and to act decisively. As the final attack began, the defenders held firm. Caleb directed fire, set traps, and moved soldiers to critical positions. Queen Lyra followed his guidance, her confidence in him absolute. The enemy advanced, but the defenders, inspired and organized, stopped every attempt to breach the tower. Caleb remained calm, giving simple, clear commands. The soldiers responded instantly, covering each other, attacking in coordinated strikes and turning the enemy's strength into weakness. During a pause in the fighting, Caleb spoke quietly to Queen Lyra. "This is the moment," he said. "We push back, then we end this." The queen nodded. She had learned everything she could from him, but now she was ready to act alongside him. Together, they coordinated a counterattack. Soldiers moved swiftly, cutting off enemy advances, pushing them back step by step. The city shook with the battle, but the tower stood firm. Caleb's strategy, combined with Queen Lyra's presence and leadership, made them unstoppable. By late afternoon, the enemy was in full retreat. Their ships withdrew, soldiers fell back, and the city was quiet once more. The tower remained standing, its defenders victorious. Queen Lyra looked at Caleb, her face filled with admiration. "You did this," she said. "You saved the empire." Caleb shook his head. "We did this together," he said. "Your soldiers fought, your empire survived. I only guided." She realized he was right. Humans could inspire, but survival required courage from everyone. She felt a deep respect and gratitude for him. After the battle, Queen Lyra gathered the surviving soldiers. She spoke to them, praising their courage but also pointing to Caleb. "He saved my life," she said. "He guided us through chaos. We follow him, we trust him. That is why we survived." The soldiers nodded. Some still could not believe a human had led them to victory, but they had seen it with their own eyes. The Queen's words carried authority, and they felt hope and pride. The empire had been saved, not by fear or tradition, but by trust, courage, and guidance. In the days that followed, Queen Lyra and Caleb worked together to rebuild. The city was in ruins, but the remaining soldiers repaired defenses, restored communications, and organized supply lines. The Queen learned more from Caleb each day. She asked questions, observed his methods, and implemented his strategies across the empire. She saw that humans could simplify chaos, inspire loyalty, and lead efficiently. Caleb did not seek power or glory. He only wanted to help her survive and guide the empire wisely. Rumors spread across the alien empire about the strange alliance between a human and the Queen. Other planets watched in disbelief as the strongest empire in the region survived under human guidance. Queen Lyra realized that tradition had held them back, that fear had controlled loyalty, and that humans had shown a better way. She began to trust Caleb fully, following his advice not just in battle, but in diplomacy and governance. The empire was changing, and it was stronger because of it. One evening, Queen Lyra stood on the balcony with Caleb. The sun set over the ruins, casting long shadows across the city. She spoke softly. "I never thought I would see the empire like this," she said. "Alive but changed, strong but different, all because of you." Caleb looked at her, calm as ever. "You did this," he said. "I only guided. Your empire survived because you and your soldiers fought and because you trusted me." The Queen smiled. She had learned the true meaning of leadership, and she had found someone she could trust completely. The empire began to rebuild under Queen Lyra's leadership and Caleb's guidance. Fleets were restored, cities were repaired, and alliances were strengthened. The alien High Council no longer challenged the Queen openly. They had seen the results of following human-led strategy, survival, loyalty, and efficiency. Queen Lyra knew that the empire had been saved by courage, trust, and human wisdom. She felt a sense of pride, not just in the empire but in the human who had changed everything. As months passed, the Queen and Caleb worked together daily. They trained soldiers, planned defenses, and negotiated with allies. She relied on him for guidance, and he continued to teach through example. The empire was stronger than it had ever been, not because of fear or tradition, but because humans had shown how loyalty, courage, and clear thinking could create real strength. Queen Lyra often reflected on the moment Caleb had saved her life in the throne hall. It had been the turning point, and it had changed everything. One quiet evening, the Queen addressed the people of the empire. She spoke of survival, courage, and trust. She spoke of a human who had guided her, inspired her soldiers, and saved her life. The people listened, some in disbelief, some in admiration, but all recognized the truth. The empire had been saved by a human's guidance. Queen Lyra's words carried hope, and she saw the beginning of a new era. The empire would grow stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. Queen Lyra stood on the balcony once more, looking out over the city. Caleb Morgan stood beside her, calm and steady as always. She realized that he had done more than save her life. He had changed the course of the empire. She trusted him completely, and she knew that together they could face any threat, any challenge, and any enemy. The empire had survived, and it would thrive under their partnership. Humans had shown that true strength came from courage, loyalty, and wisdom, not just numbers or weapons. And so, the empire moved forward into a new era. Queen Lyra followed Caleb's guidance, relying on his judgment, trusting his instincts, and learning from his experience. The soldiers and people of the empire had seen the power of humanity firsthand, and they respected it. The Queen had been saved, the empire had been saved, and the legacy of human leadership would continue to shape their future. Together, they had survived the impossible and they would continue to thrive. In the quiet of the high tower, Queen Lyra finally felt peace. The enemy had been defeated, the council had been humbled, and the empire was alive. She looked at Caleb, gratitude and respect shining in her eyes. "We did it," she said. Caleb shook his head, calm as always. "We survived," he said, and she knew he was right. Survival, courage, and trust had won. The human had guided her, saved her, and changed the course of an empire. She would follow him always, and together they would shape the future for generations to come. The sun rose on the empire, and Queen Lyra stood beside the human who had saved her life. The empire was no longer the same. It was stronger, wiser, and united. All because a human had acted with courage, inspired loyalty, and led with clear thinking. The queen had learned that true power came not from fear, but from trust. Caleb Morgan had proven it, and the empire would never forget.